All right. How fun was that? Even though it's not going to be a really super fun show.
That's a super cool intro.
I have quite a few of those, so thank you, Peter, also known as Gonna Go For It, for making some cool stuff, and I get to kind of pull that into a toolbox to make some other cool things. So,
Cool.
welcome, guys. Welcome to the show. We're gonna talk about some like not very nice things. But I think it's important we have this conversation. But before we get into all of that, I want to introduce my guest. I have student Dr. Ben. Would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I'm student Dr. Ben. As the name implies, I am a third-year medical student, currently on rotations, but I also, in my free time, have a YouTube channel where I talk about science, specifically about the medicine related to transgender issues and biological sex. And recently have been talking more about ivermectin because that's also a thing. So if you're interested in science, which if you like ScientistMel, you probably do, you probably also like my content.
Well, thank you for being here. I will get their links and put them in the description later. I pulled them in after I set the thing up, so they were kind to jump in. And we also have Jenny. Jenny, would you like to introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
No.
I've known
I,
Jenny
I'm
for a little bit.
I'm the oldest transgender person on Earth. Um,
That's an
or at least it feels
accomplishment.
that
You
way.
should be proud.
Yeah, okay, sure. I'll tell my wrinkles then. And as my name applies, I do nothing. I speak mostly on social issues regarding transgender issues, and I tend to stay away from the biology because I'm certainly not a doctor. But I know more about the biology than certainly most cis people do. Um, but I'm just trying to, get the game to be played straight for trans people to have a chance in life to not be abused anymore and to be able to grow as individuals and human beings. And our topic today is certainly not one of the ways that happens. Well, our topic is, but not
Yes,
what we're going to talk about.
right. Thank you, Sinister Porpoise, for the $2 super chat. I prefer technology. Technology is great. It often is very cruel to me, though, particularly with my internet. So today, I don't know if you guys watch and have heard about Dave Chappelle. If you haven't, then I'm going to apologize in advance because we're going to talk a bit about his latest comedy special. Before we get into that, I want to kind of preempt this with saying Dave Chappelle's jokes on racism are completely valid. Okay. We're not going to talk about any of his jokes about his personal lived experiences. A lot of comedians, when they go dark like that with the darker jokes, that's one way for them to cope with their trauma. And we're not going to tell Dave Chappelle how to express his lived experiences. I think, I express my trauma in the way that I want to. And I think that's completely valid. I think where we're going to focus is that where we kind of take concern here is that when you start using that as an excuse to abuse and use other people, um, that circle, you could talk about that circle of abuse if you want to. People who have been abused sometimes become abusers. Now, that doesn't mean that their abuse was not valid and that they should have every right to be angry and upset. But when you start abusing other groups that are regularly punched in the face all the time, um, that's where I draw a line. And some people disagree with that. So I know I sent the transcript of it to Jenny and to Ben. I had to put it away for a little bit, and I've tried to read the rest of it, but it upset me so bad. I'm like, my mental health is more important. So they were kind enough to go through it too. I'm going to focus primarily on his jokes that relate to me with the Me Too stuff. And I figured I would let, or give Jen and Ben a space to talk about the jokes associated with trans, as that's related to their personal lived experiences. Okay. So what did you find problematic primarily about the jokes? I guess I'll start with Ben, and Jen, if y'all want to chime in, just let me know.
Where to begin with the problems of these jokes? I mean, if we're gonna talk the biggest problem, like at least the biggest thing that stood out to me was he drags in this person, Daphne, who is trans, and he uses her as a crutch to say that he's not transphobic. Essentially, he's like, I've got a trans friend, even though she's really not his friend. He's like obviously superior in his experience and comedy, and she looks up to him, and then she commits suicide, and he turns that into a joke. And that, I think, was the biggest shocking thing. I mean, I knew going into reading this that it was going to be very hard to read and there's going to be a lot of stupidity. I did not expect him to go as low as to joke about another human being's suicide.
Yeah.
I was very upset at that part too, Ben. I come at this from a somewhat different angle. My sense of humor can be very, very gallows, very dark. I've caused people bother with some of the jokes I've told and things, and so I understand how and why a comedian will get gallows in their humor. But I learned long time ago, you do not attack another person's reality with your humor. You just don't do that. And the darker the comedy gets, the less likely you should be to do it, because it is hurtful, because it does attack another person's ego, because they do walk away with scars from it. It does become a trauma of their life. And Dave Chappelle has proved himself to be completely callous, not just a comedian, but a human being who is callous to what he's saying, to how he treats people, and the effect that his words have on others. It's really sad, because I was a fan.
And it's really interesting if we're going to kind of throw that, a statistic out there. Right around the time that Daphne died by suicide, there was huge all over the news. And one of the articles that came out was comedian's death underscores high suicide rate. Let me share this. Okay, here we go. So comedian's death underscores high suicide rate among transgender people. And at the time of the survey, it was around, and I'll put the article in the chat here. Approximately 40% of transgender adults reported attempting suicide in their lifetime. And that's according to a 2015 transgender study. And here's Daphne here. The thing that's interesting, one of her friends, and I dug around a little bit, here's a article for it. They copied and pasted from her Facebook. This is one of Daphne's friends that talks about how she knew Daphne, and her feelings basically on Dave's, on Dave's particular jokes. I'm multitasking here. Now, Dave made jokes about Daphne in his show Sticks and Stones, and a week later she died by suicide. It's uncertain if that was the main cause, because usually among trans people, and I'll be quiet here in a second, you have a lot of trauma. And in this case, Daphne suffered PTSD from past experiences and past trauma. So she was always proud to introduce me to her friends as her bestie, and the way she listed my accomplishments made me remember, damn, I really am that bitch. I saw her start to get booked for more and more comedy performances, and I felt like, damn, she's about to be a celebrity, and I'm going to get to say I knew her before she was famous. And then she killed herself. Today marks 2 years since she left us. So she died 2 years ago on October 12th. So it's like he timed this special right around the time that she died by suicide. And her friend is basically begging people not to watch this show. Oh gosh, I just, this is not fun stuff to talk about. It's pretty. So Daphne had PTSD from a life of trauma, and she had battled suicidal thoughts for years. I think the final blow was a combination of her losing custody of her daughter, losing her job, and dealing with a lot of transphobic harassment on the streets of San Francisco. I lived with her, and yet I didn't know how bad she was feeling. I heard from a friend that Dave Chappelle mentioned her last year in a stand-up comedy routine, and he mentioned how he let her open for one of his stand-up routines, but she bombed it. For him to patronize her, demean her, and minimize her talent after her death is cruel and crass. And this is what he said. This was his jokes that he said. This bitch bombed for 45 minutes straight. That show was terrible. But here's what impressed me. Any other comedian I've ever seen, if they bombed as bad as she did, would have snuck out of the theater and gone on home and cried. But she found a seat right in front. She laughed hard like she didn't bomb. She was talking to me while I was performing like she was watching the TV alone. And the crowd didn't like that shit because she sucked. So it's like, do you talk about your friend this way, Dave?
No, you don't.
So what are your thoughts on this, guys? I'm going to bring us back.
If you read the transcript of the show, for me, a couple of things stood out. He did really talk about some things that are very true and legitimate about our community, and many individuals in it. But none of it was in a positive light at all. None of it was even in a neutral light. It was everything observation it seems that he's made about the transgender people. He finds something negative to present it as, that he always faces everything in a negative, and it's all within his own sense of reality, his own definition of what trans people are, and I'll even go so far as to say our right to exist. You know, he keeps saying I'm not transphobic. I'm not transphobic. I have trans friends and blah blah blah. I'm sorry, man. You know, your actions greatly outweigh your words. And if you're going to continue to behave this way, sorry, you're going to get labeled that way. You want to call yourself a TERF? Well, you're a TERF, and you've bitten off a big chunk of reality now, dude.
I mean, I just, my brain wants to just shut down with just the awfulness. And usually when something like these, and that's why I was when I was reading this, I'm like, this is just so terrible. I don't watch certain things because it really, really upsets me. And I'm like, I love Mr. Rogers, but I tell you, Mr. Rogers would not be proud of me this week because I was so mad. And I was raging. But oh my gosh. So I wanted to bring up an interesting perspective here. So Daphne's sister, and I can't find an article about this, but it's my understanding that Daphne's family often misgendered her and wasn't very supportive. They all said, well, she loved Dave Chappelle. Okay. Let me ask a question. This is where I look at power balance. If you're struggling transgender comedian. You're first of all, you're already in a highly marginalized population. Are you going to say no to Dave Chappelle?
Oh, of course not.
Probably not.
Probably not. And he uses this as, oh, she always laughed at my jokes. I always gave her my jokes. I even and at one point in time, he even mocks Daphne and says when, he runs into her at some point in time, he's gonna say, I knew your father and he was a wonderful woman. Like, this is funny. I mean, he would say that to a surviving child of a trans woman who died by suicide. And I'm going, it just doesn't check out for me that they were buddy buddy, because I have been nice to men because I didn't want to get further hurt by them. And I understand that that probably translates to trans women. They're like, I'm going to be nice to this person so I don't get hurt by them or drugged through the mud or not be able to do my job anymore. What do you guys think about that? The power balance, is that a thing that or is this just me, or what do you guys see here?
Like there's definitely times when you come up with any excuse in the book to make sure that you pass in a certain situation, to make sure that you're not stirring the pot, or make sure that like you're not putting yourself in a dangerous situation. Like I think as a trans guy, one of the scariest things is men's locker rooms, because that's like the boys' space. You're very vulnerable in a sense that like people can tell what your body looks like, and there's certain customs in the men's locker room that like you just follow, and it's hard when you don't have certain anatomy to follow those customs. And it's weird when you walk in and like I have to sit down to pee if I don't have my STP on me, and like, do I go in, do I go sit to pee? Like, are they gonna know? Are they gonna have red flags go off that I don't belong there? And it's really scary, and I have things in my mind set up of how do I mitigate a situation if it comes up, if somebody is to confront me. Like, I've considered telling people that like I have a difference in sexual development, or like I have androgen insensitivity, or like something stupid, or like just so that I don't like get hurt from anything. So I as much as I would love to be 100% open all the time and be able to just speak my position on these issues, it's not safe to do so a lot of the time. And I totally get the perspective that Daphne would have had to just go along with whatever was happening, because she could have gotten very hurt. And I want to let Jenny speak more about this, because Jenny's been around the block a lot longer, and I will admit too that my experience coming out so recently, the climate's very different for me now than it was for Jenny.
When I came out, there was a Dave Chappelle on every corner, essentially, and except it wasn't intended as comedy; it was intended as hate from every corner of every institution, every individual, everything you could imagine, every media station. It was just rampant, which nobody explained to me before I came out, because there was no internet, there was no way to communicate these kinds of things between people, because we didn't know each other, and had no way of finding out who each other was and how to talk to. But it was very, very bad then. And Dave Chappelle is just like trying to yank it back to that. You know what really bothered me also in his show, and I don't even like calling it a show, was when he claims to be, when he agreed that he's a TERF, and he takes the stance of J.K. Rowling, and he brings it into the cancel culture discussion a little bit, and she didn't get cancel cultured. She's still a billionaire. She's still doing everything she wants, anytime she wants, writing anything she wants, no matter how hurtful to who. So to say that she's been cancel cultured is absolutely ridiculous. To think that to imply that we're going to cancel culture him is absolutely ridiculous. He's also a very, very wealthy person. He was paid what, 20, 30, 40 million dollars for this Netflix work.
I mean,
You
this
know,
one show is 24 million, and the
yeah,
woman. I have a funny story about that. Whenever you're ready, Jenny.
sure.
It's not
You know,
funny. That was sarcasm. So
but he's talking out of a place of privilege that none of us will ever see. And you know, he doesn't need to defend himself. He can say anything he wants because he's insulated. He's completely insulated from all of us. And no, he's not going to get cancel culture. There's going to be some efforts for that, and there's going to be a lot of bad things said about him by a lot of people. But it's not going to really affect anything. He's used to taking time off. He's got enough money that he can take time off, you know, in a period of years for letting things cool down if it were to come to that. So you know, he's on a no lose situation here, no matter what he does. But then to take the turf stance and to begin to spout things that are absolutely biologically incorrect, scientifically incorrect, socially incorrect, and to take the position of this a small and strange group of strange women in the UK, and dump that on the entire transgender population is obscene. It's just obscene.
I want to show you. There was. Let me share my screen here, and then I'll put it in the chat. Unfortunately, there's huge freaking block right here. Netflix employee organizing Chappelle walkout fired for leaking info to the press. This was alleged. They don't have 100% proof that she did this. And the employee is a pregnant Black lady who allegedly leaked the metrics about the comedian's controversial new special, meaning how much he got paid, that sort of thing. And she was organizing the walkout. So people are getting canceled at Netflix for expressing their opinions. There were another couple of people who were suspended. Let me see. It was a Forbes article here. These people. Netflix suspends employees for crashing meeting amid Chappelle transphobia controversy. So they were suspended. They didn't lose their jobs, but they were suspended for coming to a meeting they weren't invited to and saying, we got problems with this. They're being canceled for saying this isn't okay. So it's just, I don't get it. I don't, how can you say it's okay to have this show and then Netflix is actively canceling people and firing people and suspending people for stuff like this?
Well, and it's that Netflix is using itself as its own defense in a way that they're saying that, well, okay, the Chappelle show, blah blah blah, but look, we gave you discourse, disclosure from Laverne Cox, the film, which by the way received critical acclaim by virtually everyone who's seen it, both in the community and outside of the community. Well, we gave you Girl, which was this tale of a transgender girl in Europe, age of 15 or 16, something like that. That was clearly made by a cishet male, because it showed all the tawdry, gross, horrible things about being trans. It focused on genitals. It didn't focus on life or people or humans or anything. It was just about his genitals. And I say his, meaning the writer, not the actor. I don't think he is comfortable with his own genitals, so he had to write something about it that way. And they say, well, we've done this, so therefore we can do Chappelle. It's like, okay, well, if you want to look at it that way, how much did you pay Chappelle? How much did you pay Laverne Cox?
Yeah, really.
You paid Laverne Cox what, $250,000 for that show?
Almost nothing. Almost nothing. Okay. Somebody's telling me that there's popping on microphones and stuff. So be certain to mute if you're not talking.
Yeah, it's
I think
Jenny's
it
mic.
also,
Also, we're working on getting we got to fundraise to get Jenny a new computer and a mic. So
okay. Well, you know what? Maybe we
All
need
right,
to do
y'all.
that. Guys, please send Jenny a new computer. Let's see if we can get her a new computer so she can continue to share her experiences, because we need more voices out there. So yeah, so I'm taking huge offense and huge whatever's I don't even have words anymore. I'm so tired and exhausted. I don't have words anymore. I just let me touch a bit on this video that I found. Do you guys know about James Acaster?
No.
You're probably gonna love him now. This was shot in 2019. Before the Chappelle show thingy. Well before that. And he hits the nail on the head. So let's have a little bit of positivity right now. Let's see. Here we go.
That's so true though.
I mean, yeah, 2019. You know who needs to be challenged? The trans community.
Right? How about challenge cis-het white guys?
I mean, I love James Acaster. He gets into a bit more about this. Oh, I attack everybody, because that's one of the things that Dave Chappelle discusses in his public rant, like a YouTube edgelord that just had a stage and was paid $24 million. But okay.
That's a good point.
I love James Acaster for this reason. And I'll put this link in the chat. People can watch it later if they want to. That's exactly how I feel about all of this. Like, why are we challenging the trans people? Why are we challenging sexual assault survivors? We need to check our privilege and stuff. I mean,
if you have to stand up there and say, I don't hate this group that I said these terrible things about because I hate everybody, that is not a compliment. that what is that saying about yourself, that you hate everybody? That's kind of sick, don't you think?
yes. And there's an important point that I kind of wanted to bring out. When would it be okay to make jokes like that? James Acaster, I feel, kind of leads into it. Whenever there's equality across the board, that's when I think it would be okay to make jokes like that. But there's not. I mean, if everybody was treated the same, we didn't have all of these marginalized groups. If everybody was on a true level playing field, all jokes would be awesome. I feel like that's my perspective. What do you guys think about that, Ben? I'll start with Ben and then I'll hit up Jenny. When is it okay to make jokes like that?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you on that it's based on equality. I think if the trans community was not dealing with what we're dealing with, then yeah, there's some things that would be funny. And like with other communities, the same. So I would agree with you on that point.
What do you think, Jenny?
When I read the transcript and I read the trans jokes, a lot of those jokes I've heard trans people tell.
Mm.
I can admit that some of them I've thought myself. He does a quick bit on Caitlyn Jenner, and I know we've all
Mm.
said the same things about Caitlyn Jenner that he has. He particularly cited the fact, and I don't remember this occurring, but well, let's pretend it's factual, that Caitlyn Jenner won a Woman of the Year award.
She did. She
She
actually
really
did.
did. The first year
Mhm.
after she came out of the closet.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a laughable occurrence from any perspective you want to take. Um, so some of his jokes, like I said, are some things that we would tell ourselves, but that's joking upon ourselves. That's me laughing at me, and
Mhm.
that's a damn sight different than you laughing at me, or you trying to incite others to laugh at me.
Mhm.
It's just not the same. It's just not the same. It's like when black people um, become very upset with when white people use the N word, which is perfectly understandable. Okay,
Mhm.
um, why don't we get that same? Why don't we get that same privilege of saying I can tell this joke about me, but you can't. You
Yeah.
cannot. You don't know what reality I've been through, son of a bitch.
I think it's interesting to note also, there are various people that are Black within the LGBTQIA plus, individual in that particular community. They've come out and they've written a couple of things. There's one comedian, she's Black and trans, and she wrote an open letter. Let me share my screen here. And then, yes, hello to everyone in the chat. I normally say hi, but we just kind of jumped right on this. I'll give a shout out to you guys in just a little bit. Here is an open letter from Dahlia Bell. She is a Black trans comedian. And her letter basically says, oh God. Okay. Dear Dave, we're both comedians. I guess that makes me a member of your tribe. Because he said basically that Daphne wasn't part of the trans tribe. She was part of his tribe. That's one of the things that he says in his rant on stage, I guess. And she goes, I'm sure you've never heard of me, though. And I can think of at least 3 reasons for that. I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm transgender. No, I'm writing in hopes of someday opening. No, I'm not writing in hopes of someday opening for you. In fact, I can't think of anything I have ever wanted that you could possibly offer me, least of all an apology. I don't need an apology for all the trans jokes. I'm 40 years old. You think I've never heard a trans joke? Years before I knew trans was an available identity, I knew trannies were punchlines. That's what's got me and my peers salty about your latest special. I'm legitimately thankful for Chappelle's special for one reason. I've always been a bit self conscious that the first 15 minutes of my hour special are trans jokes. But now that he spent over an hour on LGBTQ people, I feel pretty good, said Robin Tran. Or, as my friend and fellow comedian Jeffrey J put it, each time I hear that Dave Chappelle has a new special, I feel sad. Not because I know the trans jokes are coming, but because I know these same trans jokes are coming. Watching the closer reminded me of just how influential you had been on my early stand-up and understanding of comedy. Your formulaic joke structure and all too predictable edgelord punchlines took me right back to my very first year performing at open mics. But hey, you've been doing this for 33 years. That's no small achievement. It only makes sense that you might run out of new ideas. Even so, as a longtime fan, something I always admired about comedy was its ability to push boundaries and challenge norms. Now it's 2021, and I think we can all agree that bitter old men griping about progress are killing comedy. Were I to bitch and moan about people having taken offense at a previous set, I would be rightly booed off stage. And you know what? I'd be grateful because I'm a comedian and criticism is how we grow. So, watching your special, I couldn't help but think This dude is 48 years old, been doing comedy for 33 years, and still hasn't built up a thick enough skin to take criticism. It's rather sad, actually, because as comedians, it's our job to say shit for money. There's no obligation on anyone else to approve of the stupid shit we say, which brings us to our next issue. After coming on stage, you rightly call attention to your status as rich and famous, which is the only reason anyone gets a laugh break for Black people beating up Asians. Hate crimes aren't so much a joke as an American way of life. It would be like getting a laugh break for saying, I drank a cup of coffee. This is, of course, the only first of many more basic jokes to come. I won't read the rest of this, but I have posted the link in the side chat. But this is an interesting point and something where we get into, is this art? Is this art? I'm like, in my opinion, Dave Chappelle is a plagiarist because all he did was take jokes from the rape culture and the turf playbook and just say it on stage with a light on him with a mic in his hand. It is not original. It is not profound. It's not, oh, this really made me think. It is none of those things for me. I see him as a plagiarist. That's what I see. That's why I don't think it's art. That would be like me taking a paint by number Van Gogh and using different colors than what it says in the key. You know what I mean? And even then, that's more original than what he did. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and I would argue that, like, of course, satire is a great form of art, but what he did was not satire. Like, because satire is going to draw attention to real problems and inspire social change, usually for the better, hopefully for the better in most cases. And I'm sorry that I look like a candy cane. I mentioned this in the comments. But he didn't even do satire. He literally just insulted people and made light of very horrifying situations. Like, that's not satire. So, like, I know he keeps saying that he's, I don't know what is, like, if his goal is to get back at cancel culture or whatever, but, like, he can try to say that he's doing satire, but he's not. I would argue this isn't satire. This is just, it's lazy. I would agree with you, Mel, in that he's stealing insults from other groups of people. He hasn't made anything original. He hasn't caused us to think about things in a different way. He's just bashed an entire group, multiple groups of minorities. And yeah, so I would say this is not art. I do not think, if indeed he intended on satire, I do not think that came across.
What do you think, Jenny?
There's like 3 points that keep coming to mind. I once heard a comedian, when I was a kid, one of my fantasies of life was to become a comedian. Okay, and so I paid a lot of time, or spent a lot of time listening to comedians, listening to them talk about comedy and presentation. I've gone to just thousands of hours of comedy shows at small clubs and stuff like that. Turns out I'm just not funny. But anyways, I learned a few lessons about it. And one of the things that I remember, a very famous comedian, and whose name I won't mention because that will just color everything, was that if a comedian starts to wear blue, and at that time blue was being used to describe obscenities, bad language, bad attitudes, and very sexual oriented comedy. It says that they've reached a point in their career where they can no longer come up with original material, that they've burned out, that they are no longer funny. They know they're no longer funny and have gone for the lowest common denominator. And that's blue humor. It's because everybody can do blue humor. People have been doing fart and pee-pee jokes for generations, all the way down to the third grade. So it's something that we all have within us, and it's what he says a comedian resorts to when they've lost their talent. I think Dave might have reached this point in the transcript of, of his show. He denies a knowledge or understanding of what punching down means. You know, well, what does that mean? It's like, dude, you know damn well what that means. There's a punching up and there's a punching down. Punching up is going after the big guy above you. Punching down is going at the person who can't defend themselves below you. And you're so spineless, you're going to continue to do it, and you have no sense of creativity and care about the other human being that you're going to do it. So that's another thing that makes me mad about it. And then we look at this other comedian that you just showed us today, and that was my first time seeing him. He's very funny. Look, he was making trans jokes for his entire bit there. But they weren't trans jokes about trans people. They were trans jokes about the people who are oppressing trans people, by the people who are making absolute jokes because of how badly they treat trans people, and probably extend that to LGBTQ people as well. I'm out of words.
I understand that. One of the things I'm going to mute you from time to time, Jenny. I'm sorry, because your computer's doing like weird stuff. It's okay. It's okay. I gotcha. Okay. One of the things that I found, again, I'm going to pull back up really quick because this was an important point with this particular comedian, Ms. Bell, the one black trans woman. This is an important point here. Again, Dave, some of us are black. And when I was growing up in the Midwest, there was never a shortage of racist white dudes to tell me about their black friend who gave them permission to say the N-word, right? I hear you, Dave. I hear you holding up your fellow comedian Daphne Dorman as the good tranny who never made Dave feel bad for being transphobic. Daphne Dorman, your friend, who you describe as a terrible comedian and didn't know she had a child until reading her obituary after she had killed herself, 8 days after the one time you actually spent any significant amount of time with her in person. As if that weren't insulting enough, you then double down as though you were representing a greater community to her than her trans community. And I have to wonder how many transgenders knew her, loved her, supported her, and encouraged her that you erased so cavalierly. I thought that was just like right on top. So this is Dahlia Bell. If you see any of her stuff, share it around. She's a comedian and a writer, works with the trans community. In a community with an abnormally high rate of depression and suicide, that's the part that hurt. Every transgender person I know has lost someone by suicide, and rarely has the reason ever been what other trans people have said to them on Twitter. Because he blamed the trans community for her dying by suicide. He blamed them for her death and took absolutely no responsibility for what he had to say, and instead gave, well, she always laughed at my jokes. She was my friend. Dave says, Twitter isn't real. The marginalization, mockery, dehumanization, and violence many of us face every day of most of our lives is what fuels our despair. For you to use Daphne's tragedy as your closing tag is the only thing you've done that's made me angry enough to write a letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that person said it really well. And I think to people in the audience who aren't trans or who don't really understand this idea of like being one of the good ones, Katie Montgomery had a video about this a while back, and she addresses kind of that thing of like, oh, but like all these other trans people, like get mad and are sensitive about things, but I'm one of the good ones. I'm not that person that will cancel you for making jokes and stuff. Like it's so frustrating to see somebody from another marginalized community using that same thing against another marginalized community. Like you'd think you'd know better, and you'd think you would understand why that's a problem. And so I think that's especially a reason why we can't give Dave a pass, because like, and I mean, we shouldn't give anybody a pass for things like that, but somebody who hasn't experienced anything of their own similarly, at least it's like, well, you just didn't know, you didn't understand. But it's even worse when somebody who should know, who does know what he's doing, he knows exactly what he's doing, and he does it anyway. Like, that's a whole other level of being offensive.
And, the point that Jenny made earlier, that he doesn't understand what punching down is. The man has done comedy for 33 years. He's considered an expert in his field. That would be like me going, wait, Schrodinger was involved with atomic theory? Oh my God, what is Schrodinger? Or, oh my God, quantum chemistry? You mean that's chemistry? Quantum particles have to do with chemistry? Oh my God.
Well, I mean, I have people telling me that I don't know anatomy or physiology, so.
I mean, but I mean, I literally teach chemistry, and I've had a publication, I've done stuff, done research and education as well as in breast cancer. And I'm going, if I were to sit there and go, wait, that doesn't, you don't get to say that. You don't get to say, I do this. I'm an expert in this field. I know what I'm talking about. I'm a comedic genius, and go, what's punching down? You don't get to do both. He knows exactly what he did in that show. He knows exactly what he did. And I think he's transphobic. I think he's a misogynist, and I think he's transphobic. And the thing that upsets me, and I found pretty good article on Slate. Found a pretty good article on Slate. And I'll put this here. Let me share it over here for you guys so you can kind of see. Dave Chappelle accomplished exactly what he wanted to do. He showed us who he truly is. He's always been this way. He's always been this way. So Dave Chappelle is getting plenty of heat for his latest Netflix special, The Closer. Chappelle's 72-minute bit is squarely aimed at setting the record straight about after being widely criticized for his previous specials, in which he belittles trans people, gay people, and survivors of sexual violence. He says this is his intention right at the start. We should take him at his word. His routine, controversial as it is, accomplished exactly what he set out to do. It's not that he's punching down, he is, or that his jokes haven't aged well. They haven't. His latest special confirms once and for all, Chappelle was never the progressive darling many thought him to be. In 2019, when Chappelle won the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor, Jon Stewart called him the Black Bourdain, a nod to a widely loved chef and documentarian whose work explored the intricacies of the human condition. But he isn't the darling, intersectional, progressive person that we wanted him to be. His comments about DaBaby making a very egregious mistake, he made disparaging comments about people living with HIV and AIDS while on stage at a concert in Miami. That's what DaBaby did. So this is what Dave Chappelle said about that. He said he once shot, he uses the N-word, and killed him in Walmart. Oh, this is true. Google it. DaBaby shot and killed an N-word in Walmart in North Carolina and nothing bad happened to his career. Do you see where I'm going with this? In our country, you can shoot and kill a N-word, but you better not hurt a gay person's feelings. And this is precisely the disparity that I wish to discuss. You think I hate gay people, and what you're really seeing is that I am jealous of gay people. Oh, I'm jealous, and I am not the only Black person who feels this way. We Blacks, we look at the gay community and we say, God damn it, look how well that movement is going. Look at how well you are doing. And we have been trapped in this predicament for hundreds of years. How the hell are you making that kind of progress? I don't think they've made a lot of progress. LGBTQIA people plus people have not made a lot of progress. And being a sexual assault survivor, we have not made any kind of progress at all. I've been assaulted twice, and I never reported my assaults because at the time I was working as a high school teacher, and the person who assaulted me was a decorated firefighter who saved the lives of children. How great that would look in a newspaper. I probably would have lost my job. I didn't want to get dragged through the mud. I didn't want to deal with being blamed for my own assault. And that's exactly what he does in a portion of his particular rant or whatever. He blames women for not standing up to Harvey Weinstein sooner. Well, if it had been us, or if it had been me, if these women were really serious, they would have gone down there and like made their agents do something. Harvey Weinstein or whatever, he controlled most of Hollywood. These women would have never worked again, and some didn't because of him, because they said no. He made certain they never worked again. Then we go circle back and look at Daphne. Look at Daphne. Had she stood up to Dave Chappelle, she probably never would have worked again. She likely was very much the same way that some of these women were, trying to make a living, just trying to endure what they could so they could continue to work. And I don't think he understands that this is why women don't report. We just cope with it the best that we can because we know nothing's ever going to happen. Is anything going to happen to Dave Chappelle? Probably not. Nothing's ever going to happen to that firefighter unless he gets caught. And even then, they'll probably just let him go because they don't want to hurt his career. So it's like, it makes me mad. And I get that he's saying he's jealous of the LGBTQIA plus people and these women, I guess. But we really haven't gotten nearly as far as he thinks we have. What do you guys think?
I mean, oh, Jenny, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. There we go. I got you.
I just said, go ahead, Ben. You started first.
No, you can. You go ahead, Jenny.
Okay. Well, I do have the historical perspective on this. So, recalling my comments earlier about what it was like in the 70s, early mid 70s, and all that. I didn't come out. I made my transition in like 1979. I began. Transition doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. It takes some people 6 months, some people a few years. It took me a few years. But I had known about transgender since the 60s. I had the word transsexual in my mind. I knew what the definition was. I knew the medical aspects of it, the psychological aspects of it, at least in terms of what a kid that young can read and comprehend. That would have made me about 13, 14 when I first learned about it. And things were really horrible back then. They just plain were. There's no other way to put it, and I won't belabor it anymore. Is it better today? Yes, it is, to a degree. I think we have reached a point in the treatment of LGBT folks similar to the way the I have to be so careful saying this. The way the bigotry and racism of white people in America started to go down under the carpet. Okay, when it was becoming clear in society that society did not approve of racism and bigotry, the majority of people, that the people who participated in it kind of went under the carpet. It was still there, and we all know it is still there, but we also know it's under the carpet, so we don't talk about it. And I think that's kind of what the stage is with LGBT people. Is that the bigots are beginning to run for the carpet, because we have become more recognized and more accepted, primarily because of the 2015 marriage rights decision by the Supreme Court. But has it gotten better? No. No. We know, and gay people know too, that we're still deeply hated by many people, by many groups, without having any specific reason. These groups will just hate because their parents who were in that group hated, and now it's their turn. It's generational ignorance and generational bigotry. So no, it hasn't gotten better. And for trans people are still getting murdered. Although I won't call it a rash of murders of trans people. It's been so focused down in Texas, which is interesting in and of itself. But trans people do get murdered anywhere, everywhere, across the globe. And there are still 33 states that allow a transgender defense, a transgender panic defense for murder. And we have to be careful every step of every day of our lives. We have to judge a situation. We have to know whether or not we can speak our mind. We have to know, we decide whether or not we have to eat our identity and let people say terrible things because we can't afford the trouble, or the trouble, it could be so great it could cost us our lives. So no, it's not better. It's different, and it's a little improved, but it's not better. Not even close.
I think this points back to an issue that we've been dealing with in every minority community for forever, and that is, like, of course, the grass always looks greener on the other side because you're not experiencing what that community is experiencing. You're only seeing what you're seeing when you're around that group of people or what you see in the media. But, like, of course, you're going to know your own experience and you know what your own community is going through, but you're not going to know the struggles of a community you're not part of. It's just, you're not going to see the full extent of it. And this is going back to just, we need to listen to people of those communities. Like, I'm not going to understand the struggles of racism because it's not something that applies to me. So I need to listen to people in communities who experience racism and trust that they are experiencing something and that their experience is real. And I can't just make an assumption of what I think their struggles are, because that's not ever going to demonstrate truth of the situation. So, like, Dave and people making these assumptions need to stop making these assumptions about our community. They're not, like, Dave's never going to know what it's like to be in the trans community and to go through these struggles. So what he should do is listen to people, not just one person who's going to tell him whatever he wants to hear because of a power imbalance. Like, he needs to listen to the whole community and defer to what we say our experience is. And same thing with the Me Too movement. Like, he needs to listen to people who are affected by those kinds of things. It all goes back to listening, and it's clear that people don't want to listen and they just want to say whatever they think the experience is when they have no way of ever knowing what the experience is.
I mean, I agree with that. And one of the things that we wanted to make certain that we made very clear before we started this stream is that Dave Chappelle's feelings on racism are absolutely valid. I mean, he's experienced trauma. There's a whole section of therapy just for people who have experienced trauma from racism. It's not something that's regularly talked about. And comedians often use comedy as a way to express that trauma. So I would never tell Dave Chappelle how he should express his feelings on his own personal lived experiences. At the same time, I I take massive offense to him using his trauma as a means to abuse other people. And that's the problem that I have with all of that. Dave Chappelle knows exactly what he's doing. He cannot say, "Oh, I don't know." I can say it's just he knows exactly what he's doing, and it is lazy, as you said before, Ben. It's lazy because he's just pulling all the same arguments straight out of the turf book, and then the whole cancellation thing. J.K. Rowling has not been canceled. He's not going to get canceled. Heck, even Johnny Depp has still working, and he has been proven to have hurt Amber Heard. Now, given she's hit him too. I don't know. I've not been in their room. They're both. I don't know if it's self-defense. I don't know what's going on. The both of them have attacked each other, and they're still working. Okay. So cancel culture isn't really a big, huge thing unless you are directly involved in a societal position like a YouTuber or something like that. It just
And
upsets me. Yeah.
and something with the whole cancel culture thing is so weird is like these same people, and like we even saw this in that that other comedy routine, like my comedy is going to challenge you, and if you don't like it, don't watch my show. Like cancel culture is just voting with your dollar, right? It's voting with like what you watch and what you contribute like your time to and stuff. So it's like these same people that are telling people, yeah, well, if you don't like my stuff, then don't watch it, and then getting mad about people not watching their content because they don't like it. Like it's cancel culture essentially. Like, so do you want us to, like, do you actually believe that you don't want people to watch your content if they don't like it, or are you going to be mad about it? Like, I don't, it's not consistent reasoning from what I can tell.
Yeah, it's hilarious to me. It's absolutely hilarious to me. And really cancel culture, all it is being held responsible for stuff you do. I mean, truly, that's really what it is. And then I get people. I've talked to people who enjoyed Dave Chappelle's show, and I've honestly tried to wrap my brain around how it's art, two, how it's some profound stroke of genius, three, how is it even enjoyable? And I can't get it. I don't, and I've really honestly tried. Okay, maybe Dave has trauma that's associated with trans people, but does he really? I mean, has he been oppressed by trans people his entire life? Has he been oppressed by guys that like Harvey Weinstein types that want him to perform sexual acts for him in order to get a job? I'm trying to understand, and I can't. I just can't. I can't do it. I don't understand how any of this is okay. Even giving him the benefit of the doubt, saying he was deeply hurt that Daphne died by suicide and she truly was his friend. And I don't understand how somebody he spent almost no time with, was a really close friend of his, who he trashed in a couple of specials now, didn't know she had a kid. I'm going, I can't. And some people are saying, well, okay, well, you should have just watched it. You just really need to watch it to understand the nuances there. But then you get people that are like, well, if you don't like it, don't watch it. So I'm genuinely trying to understand what's going on with this. I don't want to give it a view. He doesn't need it anyway. Why does that even bother? I have the transcript. I can read it. But, well, it's in his nuance and how he says the things. So it's not just that he's punching people in the face. He does it with artistic flair. And I'm going, that's what I see. So instead of just maybe they add classical music to it while you're punching a transgender person in the face and somehow it's funny. I'm like, I don't understand. And I can't get anybody to explain it to me. Nobody can explain it to me how the transcript is any different than actually watching it, except the way that he says it. And I'm going, this doesn't make it better, I don't think. Okay, so B Not Just B has a good question. Can the panel address the claims that some are making that if you're offended, you're taking it out of context?
Jenny, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me fix that, Jenny. Okay, there you go. Okay, you're back. Press the mute button. I think. There you go.
I think it's on your end.
There, it's okay.
B made that comment.
And it was also, that was from Aunt Jer. Aunt Jer, as in fur. Sorry. Aunt Jer.
I'm old. I forget things. Could you repeat it, please?
Yes. Can the panel address the claims that some are making that if you're offended, you're taking it out of context?
I would like someone who genuinely believes that to explain the context to me. Is the context, well, we're going to stand up here and destroy the lives of these people because I want to. Is the context because, I just think that this would be funny, or I didn't mean anything by this. I just thought I would insult you and your family and your entire future. Show me what the context is. The context is that he stood up there to make a bunch of really tasteless jokes at the expense of a group of people. That's the context.
It's
and what context?
Got paid $24 for it.
Yeah.
And what context is this okay? Like, especially making jokes about someone who is supposedly your friend, making jokes about their loss of their life. Like, I don't know what context that would ever be okay. Like, saying that, if you just understand the context, it's funny. Like, I don't know any context where it's okay to make fun of someone losing their life.
Yeah,
don't.
I don't know. One of the things that that I found that was pretty interesting. And in any time I encounter like a sexist joke or a racist joke or something like that, sit there and say, I don't get it. And then have them explain to you why it's funny. Have them explain to you why the joke is funny. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, I don't get it. Explain to me why this is funny. And every time I say that to somebody about Dave Chappelle, they're like, well, you just have to watch it. And I'm going, okay, but explain to me why it's funny. What is funny about it? And they can't do it. They can't explain to me why it's funny. They're like, well, it's just, the way he delivers the jokes. So does he wear a clown nose and, hop around and go yuck, yuck and act like a jerk? I mean, what does he do? I mean, at least Steve Martin, when he comes out and says something ridiculous, he'll put on like a balloon animal hat and play on the banjo. I mean, it's like he looks ridiculous. Okay, I get it. The content delivery, that's important. But it's like, what does he do? What does he do that makes a joke about a woman who died by suicide, a trans woman who died by suicide, funny? And they can't explain it to me.
Yeah, because the content itself is not funny at all.
It's just
Like, does so if I were to like deliver bad news to a patient, like about to give a cancer diagnosis or something, should I just like change my tone of voice to like saying it like a comedic joke? Like, is that gonna make the situation better? Because like the delivery, like I feel like it wouldn't. I feel like the content still matters. Like the content is the core of what's happening.
I
Like,
mean,
I don't understand.
it's like the good news, bad news thing. You're like, hey, good news. Your sister said you won the lottery. Bad news, you got cancer and you're going to die in 3 months. But hey, you can go anywhere you want to go because you can afford it. So it's like
The delivery isn't the problem. It's the words that are the problem. It's the content that's the problem.
right. It's
So
it's
like it's obvious that the people that are laughing at this, they're laughing at the content,
yeah,
which is a problem.
yeah. Oh my God. I guess we're gonna wrap it up soon because I know Ben, you got a show you're doing shortly.
Well, yeah, it's in a couple hours. I wasn't sure how
Oh,
long we were gonna go, but
oh,
is it
okay.
okay if I show a little bit? So I mean, we
Yeah,
can go
go
longer.
ahead.
I'm happy to hang out. So I noticed a lot of people have been trolling me and trolling a lot of other people about things related to anti-science issues, and I know it's difficult to communicate the actual science. So I'm starting a monthly stream, kind of a break from medical myths that I usually do, where it's like the haha, people think oxygen bars are good. Like taking a break from like the pseudoscience to present real science so that you all have data to use in your conversations. So today I'm talking about reproductive embryology. I'm not going to say specifically what cases we're talking about because we're going to work through them together as if a patient's coming in and like how you'd see this person and then what ends up being the science. So you can go into conversations about biological sex, be like, well, this is actually what the science says. So hopefully it's enjoyable. But we're going to do that in about 2 hours. So join me there.
Cool. Do you have anything to show? Please get Jenny a new computer.
Actually, it's more. I need new internet. Well, I don't have a computer either, but my biggest problem is that I don't have internet at home anymore. It got too expensive, and I just
Oh,
couldn't afford
wow.
it. So I'm just living on my phone data, which one may think is also expensive. But my sister-in-law and brother are paying my phone bill, so I have open data, so that I
Well,
can do.
that's nice.
And that's why it sounds so lousy because it's data. It's not a good internet stream. Anyways, yeah, I do have something to show. Go
Okay.
watch Ben's stuff. Ben is one of the greatest additions to our community that has happened in the last couple of years. He's a brilliant guy and a very, very good communicator, and everyone can learn a huge amount from him. So please like and follow Ben
Aw,
and
shucks.
get his stuff.
I appreciate it.
Do check out Ben's channel.
Me,
I will put
I'm just a foul mouth that knows how to not get too much trouble.
So I'll put the links to Ben's channel in the description after the show. But please do check it out. Guys, do you have any final thoughts about this? By the way, if you want to see Dave Chappelle in person, he's currently touring with Joe Rogan. So you too can go and check out the right wing grifters
Barf. I can't. Are they
in
going to
New
mix in some
Orleans.
pseudoscience in there? Like start talking about ivermectin and transphobia?
Well, nobody knows where Joe Rogan was hatched from, so yeah, that's some pseudoscience there.
Oh my gosh. All right. Any final thoughts on this, guys? Just kind of wrap it up. What can we do? I mean, how do we cope with this? What are ways that we can move forward and be progressive? I don't necessarily want Dave Chappelle canceled. And this is one article. I think I'll share this with you guys really quick. This is from Michael Crawford. He's a race, identity, and culture writer. He is gay. I think he's a gay Black man. And he says, I don't want Chappelle to be canceled. I want him to pull out the threads of homophobia and transphobia that run through the quilt of his otherwise brilliant work. And I agree with that. A lot of his work is brilliant, which is why I say he knows exactly what he's doing. And that's what makes this so difficult, because he's brilliant when he talks and addresses racism, his lived experiences, things like that. He really cuts to the core of the human condition in regard to racism. And so I have no qualms with Dave Chappelle in his expression of his lived experiences. But the transphobia, the homophobia, the attacks on sexual assault victims, this is exactly why we don't report, because of crap like this. I don't know if he was trying to be ironic, or I still don't understand. But I don't necessarily want him to be canceled. I want him to do better. I mean, do a better job, because he's capable of doing a better job. What do you guys think?
I agree with that. And I mean, I don't have a whole lot of new comments to make on this. I think we've touched on everything that I wanted to say, but we definitely need to make this a learning experience. Like, and I'm not saying, obviously, I'm not saying that don't take this and become a turf or use these arguments for transphobia, but like, I mean, it's a great example of what not to do, and I wish it didn't happen. I wish none of this happened. But since it did, and we can't undo it, we can't take back what has already been said. Like, I don't even know what the right steps are to prevent this from happening again, because I know that transphobes aren't going to change necessarily. Like, we can't convince everybody. People are going to like be bad people. So I'm not sure what the steps are to move forward. But I would love it if this kind of thing never happens again.
Yeah. What do you think, Jenny?
The more we learn, and I say we as our species, our Western educated culture, the more we learn about transgender biologically, the more we begin to understand that it is genuinely a dynamic of how we are born, of the combination of forces that occur in utero. And I won't go any further than that on that, because I don't want to steal anything from Ben. But this Dave Chappelle needs to learn. He is clearly ignorant of it, or if he's not, then he's really bad if he's aware of all this. But if he doesn't understand the biology, he needs to learn the biology. And what I hope people go away with this, today's discussion by us, not necessarily Chappelle or what any other news pundit would say. What I hope you go away with is to realize that, yeah, it's really, really, really difficult to be transgender in society. It's not something we wish for. It's not something that we choose, or really deep inside are thrilled to have to deal with, but we do. And we find that there are some very fascinating and good things about being trans.
It's trans magnet.
Realize that we are not in pain. We do not attempt suicide. We do not hate ourselves. We do not lose our families and friends and jobs and living quarters because we're trans, because of what happened to us biologically. All those things happen to us because of how society has chosen to treat this biological condition that they have no understanding of. And if you walk away with this with anything, walk away realizing that people everywhere need to learn more, and that you can be a messenger of that. That when they come out with their transphobia, you can shake your head and say, you do not understand the biology. It is clear that you are ignorant. And if you do know the biology, then it's clear that you're willfully ignorant, and that your life is based on hate, not understanding, and certainly not compassion.
And just listen. I mean, if activist groups are saying, "Oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare," then just go check out one of the activist pages. That's something that I do when I want to learn more about racism and things like that. What can I do to help people, at least cope better? Because I mean, my job, I work at a college where 70% of people are poverty line, and we have a diverse population, and they're primarily marginalized groups in the form of minorities, brown and black people. And so I actively try my best to listen to what those groups are saying, so I can go, okay, I may not understand what they're going through, but I can at least have an understanding from my position of power as a professor and go, okay, they're really struggling right now because of this particular, whether it's poverty, whether they have a racist family member, or you got LGBTQ plus person who, and by the way, they are high risk for suicide in college because they don't have the support system that they need. How do I know this? I sat through training yesterday on suicide prevention, which was not necessarily great for my mental health because of this week and dealing with all of the Chappelle stuff. But there you go. It's important that if you want to know what can I do, go take a look at some of those activist pages. They have educational resources to help you say, okay, you may not understand what's going on, but these are things how you can help. And that's always a good positive way to kind of wrap that up. I'm going to read Mr. Rogers because I feel like we need that today.
We need a lot of Mr. Rogers today.
I miss Mr. Rogers so much. It hurts my heart that he's gone. Let me see. How about, I like We Are All Neighbors. I always like to read from that.
Won't you be my neighbor?
Yes. Okay, so here we go. This is The World According to Mr. Rogers. And this is, the real issue in life is not how many blessings we have, but what we do with our blessings. Some people have many blessings and hoard them. Some have few and give everything away. So the people in positions of power, they have lots of blessings and they can do stuff with that. Looking at certain comedians, Dave Chappelle, you're in a position to where you can actually cause change to happen. And he says he's rich and famous. He has lots of blessings. So the real issue in life is not how many blessings we have, but what we do with our blessings. Some people have many blessings and hoard them. Some have few and give everything away. We are all neighbors. The World According to Mr. Rogers. Please check out Ben's show later on. Give Jenny a follow on Twitter. I posted her Twitter on my Twitter. Give her a follow for some interesting stuff. And thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for being here. I guess we're just gonna, I don't normally have people on the Saturday show, so guess we'll just wrap it up. Be kind to everybody. Hugs to everyone else.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for the